Welcome to the Bias Buzz, powered by Accuracy and Media. I'm Don Irvine, and he's Brian McNichol. Good morning, Brian.
Good morning.
Exciting night last night, unexpected night last night, probably on the campaign trail. Donald Trump won a decisive victory in Indiana, and I don't think we saw it being quite that large, that big a victory, and Ted Cruz dropped out. So I didn't see this coming.
There were polls a couple of days before that showed Cruz actually in the lead. And for him to just drop off, I mean, it was 53 to 20 something. I mean, that was an overwhelming victory. So, I think Cruz did the right thing. I don't think there was anything left to go forward. At this point, you're saying, the people have clearly chosen the other candidate, but but choose me instead. I don't think you could get anyone to unite behind him like that. And, he's a lot of people's not first choice too.
Right, and the thing too is just that the polling in Indiana is kind of it's difficult. They don't have, I guess they don't really have registered voters the way a lot of us states do. It's just really difficult to get an accurate reading. So I'm not going to really blame the polls one way or the other for last night's results, in the sense that if you can't really get an accurate read, you just really don't know where you're going. I don't think there was anything for Cruz to think going in that he didn't have a good chance. I mean, he and Kasich had already arranged that Kasich wouldn't campaign in Indiana to try to give Cruz a boost and make this kind of the firewall, I think, for the campaign, but it just didn't work.
Plus, a big evangelical population there, a lot of religious people, a lot of the kind of public that he's supposed to have been appealed to, not dissimilar from Wisconsin electorally in some ways. And but worked in Wisconsin, did not work at all yesterday in Indiana.
Right, and he got Mike Pence's endorsement, the governor's endorsement, but Mike Pence does not have the same sway, in my opinion, as Scott Walker. I think that there's one difference there, and it just didn't seem to quite click and gel for Cruz overall. It's unfortunate in that sense. I mean, his Hail Mary by adding Carly Fiorina to the ticket to try to strengthen it. That probably is one of the shorter runs for our vice presidential nominee, I guess, in history, if not the shortest.
She's now lost this election twice.
Yeah, that's I don't know what you do after that. That's not a great thing to be putting on your resume at this point. I ran for president and dropped out, and then they put me on the vice presidential ticket, and I lost that one too. That doesn't bode well for your political career.
Right, and the subtext of all this, he's talking about Cruz's father having something to do with the Kennedy assassination. I mean, he just keeps throwing stuff at you, and you're like, you parry and you try to catch most of it, but it's hard to do. It's a thorough amount of stuff coming at you. It's hard to keep up with him.
Yeah, it's Trump really can throw things out. He can dish all that stuff out. The media seems to eat that up. They jumped all over this whole JFK Lee Harvey Oswald story. Very little debunking. I mean, Jake Tapper did a good job of debunking it. But a lot of others they just carried that story. It's a National Enquirer story. Yeah. The guy who owns the National Enquirer is a Trump ally, a Trump buddy. And then Trump gets on the air and he says, "Well, this is just a terrible thing, blah blah blah."
Yeah.
And the media just eats it up. And so where's
they
the
go
correction?
to Cruz and they say, "So why was your dad with Lee Harvey Oswald?" And it's like, first of all, how do you know that was his dad? Right? You have Donald Trump's word for it, or Donald Trump's supplicant's word for it. And then you're like, okay, yeah, he was there. He did meet with Lee Harvey Oswald. He was part of it. All these conclusions jumped to with the only evidence being a planted story in National Enquirer.
Yeah, and if that was really the case, and that was just another way of Trump wanting to take down Cruz, and pin him back in Indiana, then it worked, and it worked very, very well.
It got under his skin. He got a complete full rant from Cruz the day before the election. He was out of control in that you could tell that he had lost it, and he knew the end was near, and he went down guns a-blazing.
That's right. John Kasich is not quitting the race. He's still alive technically. He's still in fourth place in delegates. This is just kind of a crazy situation. He's won one state. We keep talking about this. Why is he staying in here?
Okay, well, there are people who have a theory on that. If he ran only in Ohio, okay, so say he won the Ohio primary, not inconceivable he could win Ohio as a favorite son presidential candidate. Then if you get into, if neither one of the other candidates make it to 270, it's thrown into the House of Representatives. And the House of Representatives, he would have a chance, right? You have moderate people there. Democrats would certainly prefer him to Trump, right? And he had won a state. So there is a little thing, there's still bombs he can throw, unfortunately.
Yeah, so that's the thing. Do you think he wants to be vice president?
No, he has said several times no interest in the job. But I don't think that's a Kasich job. I think he sees himself as a, star leader, eclipser of all.
And who wants to play second fiddle to Donald Trump?
Right.
Right? I mean, who could stand that? It's probably hard enough working for him. An employee probably finds that to be kind of onerous if you have to work too closely for him. So imagine being the vice president to President Trump,
Who's on that list now? And when does he bring that out? There's still some sewing up to be done. But, I mean, he can start thinking pretty conclusively in that area and doing some work. So, I guess Christie's in the running. Maybe Marco Rubio. I don't know. It's interesting to see.
Maybe Ted Cruz, because he's not lying Ted Cruz anymore.
That's
Now he's Ted.
And Trump, to his credit, was gracious about, said he was a good, tough competitor and so forth. And there have been times in this campaign when they were pretty closely aligned, and they did show the ability to get along. And so it's not impossible. And I think a lot of Republicans, the people who care about conservative policy, would be more comfortable with Trump if he had Cruz around, right? Because, I mean, Cruz was a policy dream, right? He was going to repeal, he really means it, about repeal Obamacare, strengthen the military, cut 5 departments, get rid of the IRS. He was serious about remaking Washington in a way that Trump is, Trump said is this in theory, but not necessarily, in practice. But Cruz has really thought about, this is how I would blow it up,
Trump needs to find a way now. I mean, Reince Priebus said that, the party needs to unite behind Trump. Looking at social media last night and this morning,
good luck with that.
I don't know. I mean, there's still a pretty strong core of never Trumps that are just, they're not going to stop. Then they are not going to vote for Trump. I don't know how they're going to unify this people. I mean, I'm hearing people or seeing people on social media talking about Gary Johnson, for heaven's sakes. This is just getting kind of out of control. Where do we go from here? And in the effect in November, I mean, this is now going to be a Trump versus Clinton general election. It's going to be kind of nasty, that's for sure. Neither person, is very popular with the public overall. I don't. This is, and then what happens to the Republicans on the down ticket? If people decide not to vote for Trump, will they still, vote for the down ticket? The Republicans who need to win, do they just not vote at all, and Republicans wind up with a really bad situation in the Senate and then take a heavy hit in the House?
Well, I'm not sure that. I mean, you hear so little now. Part of it is in our area, there's none of those elections are that big. We had the Democratic primary for the Senate here in Maryland, which is, it's also the general election in effect, right? The Democrat will be a heavy favorite, but I'm not sure that down ballot it makes a lot of difference. I'm not sure the fundamentals for a lot of down ballot elections are being changed by what's going on the top. Now, there was the commercial, I don't know if you saw in Arkansas, that has come out. It's a Democrat running against John Boozman for U.S. Senate in Arkansas. And his whole commercial is Trump's parade of horrible quotes about women. And it's like, John Boozman, you want to elect John Boozman to go back and help this guy? Is the whole point of the commercial. So yeah, they're going to be trying to hang his words on Republicans. But I don't know. I mean, I don't know. A lot of people in Arkansas are looking at John Boozman and saying, yeah, he's going to walk the Trump walk. I mean, they're different people. They're on different planes. And I think it would stay that way. I don't think I don't know how much it's going to bleed into the down ballot. It may hurt Democrats to have a weak candidate at the top, but I don't know how much it'll hurt Republicans.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, we've had this election too. This cycle so far, we've had a lot of people who have stayed on the sidelines. A lot of the politicians have not declared for Trump or Cruz, and now it's kind of, where are they going to go now? Will they unite? Will the party politicos, the poobahs, will they follow Reince Priebus and say, got to unite? Will they actually, come out with a public endorsement of Trump at this point? Lindsey Graham has been bouncing around. Is the next thing, is he actually going to come out and say he's for Trump after having gone with Jeb and, Ted? He's, I don't know. I mean, this is just one of those. This is just a crazy, crazy political season.
It is, and I don't know. There are a lot of people. This is going to work to Trump's advantage either way, because you're already seeing like Bill Kristol, George Will, the cognoscenti of the conservative movement saying, "No way, we'll never get on this guy. He's the most dangerous thing ever," which does not hurt him among his supporters, and does not even hurt him among the people who haven't decided yet. They're like, if whoever those guys say not to vote for, I have to seriously consider. I mean, this is not just a blow up of the political realm. It's a blow up of the whole Washington, influence realm, the business we're in, all of that is on trial. It's like, the whole think tank world got rocked. The things that think tanks have been talking about for 15 or 20 years, are now all on trial in a brand new way as of yesterday.
Yeah, so we'll see where we're going from that. Before we leave Indiana, Bernie Sanders upset Hillary Clinton. Now, Sanders wins, but he still loses because he's still so far behind the delegate count. Hillary still picks up something, and she continues to inch her way there. She's almost there now. I think this is a foregone conclusion that she is the nominee for the Democrats, even though she's not the most popular person among all the Democrats. But Bernie, I think, is still going to continue to take this forward toward the convention. The problem he's going to be facing, I think, to a certain extent, is just that after several months of beating Hillary on the fundraising front by a pretty wide margin, he had a pretty steep drop-off in April, and he started laying off staffers. So that's not really the mark of a campaign that's got a lot of life left in my opinion.
Well, he could win the last 14 Democratic primaries and 23 of the last 30. And he is laying off staffers, but they had the Maryland primary. The action has left Maryland. He's not leaving an organization in Maryland. Okay, if he wins the nomination, he's running against Trump. It's not being that state level turn out the vote thing. That's another thing that, like, a fundamental of politics that we always say, who has the ground game. The ground game, Cruz had 10 times the ground game of Trump. Which one is going forward, right? Ground game does not win, and Bernie's never relied on it. He doesn't need staff. He doesn't need these little outlier operations once the action's gone from each thing. And he is hot right now. How do they get if he pulls this off and he wins 14 in a row, 23 of the last 30, how do they go into Philly and just rubber stamp Hillary?
Right.
Their energy is not with the guy they want either.
That's the question. I mean, it's that Democratic convention in Philly could wind up being now far more interesting than the Republican convention in Cleveland. If Bernie if he sticks with it and gets there, I mean, he definitely can raise a little bit of a ruckus and just cause some problems that the Democrats really would prefer not to see happen at all.
Huge ruckus. I mean, the people behind him are ruckus-minded, and if they feel like they're getting ripped off and it's the poobahs in the back room, I mean, these are people, their whole case is participatory democracy. If you say, well, it's participatory democracy as long as you pick the right person, they're not going for that. The elites are in trouble this year. You better play the game straight. So
let's talk about Hillary just for a short bit here. Hillary's having some problems. She had a town hall on Monday evening and in West Virginia, and basically tried to walk back her comments that she had made in March that she was going to put the coal miners, coal miners and the businesses out of business. I guess the coal companies out of business. Got a question from a retired coal miner. I guess laid off coal miner. I guess he's kind of forced into retirement because what do you do?
Right.
When you're a laid off coal miner? There's not a whole lot of options to how to get retraining if you've been in the business for quite a while. She kind of apologized. what's your take on this?
She actually has a case on this. What she said in March was they were trying to push a green energy program for the areas that are displaced, where there are a lot of displaced coal miners, right? So what she was saying is, we're going to put all these people out of business. We need to find other jobs for them. But if you slice that quote just right, it says, we're going to put all these people out of business. So, but when she tried to recount this to the guy, she felt what she had said accurately, right? But the way she recounted the incident was inaccurate. And I think that happens to Hillary a lot. She sort of misremembers things. And so, you roll that into the history of her not being real good with the truth anyway. And, it's hard to trust her. It's a trust issue. So now she's like, I'm misstated. I was misstated, blah, blah, blah. And, you're looking at her and you're like, she's probably lying. It's probably the take we have.
Yeah, that was the thing. I mean, Allison Camerata the other day asked Debbie Wasserman Schultz, the DNC chairwoman, about this. Does this not create a trust issue? Because, in essence, just like you were saying, she actually had a point that she was making on green energy and jobs and retraining and coal, being kind of the industry that needs to kind of go away. But she then comes back and says it's a misstatement, tries to apologize. And then it becomes, well, what is she saying? Can you trust her to say anything? And so it goes back to all those problems. Now, the coal miner is a registered Republican, but he said that he hadn't decided on who he was going to support either, right?
Right. So I wrote it down, what she said. And he was asking her about, she said, we're going to put coal miners and coal companies out of business, which is, if you read the stories of this, does seem to be sort of taken out of context. And she said, what I said was totally out of context from what I meant. It was a misstatement. Well, no, it wasn't a misstatement. You said exactly what you meant. What I was saying was that the way things are going now, we will continue to lose jobs. That's what I meant to say. I didn't mean that we were going to do it. Okay. And she was talking about action to help prevent it. So, she's not, it's one of those things, if you had always been honest and straight on every dealing, you would get benefit of the doubt here. But you're not. Right? The benefit of the doubt works against you here.
Right. I also now want to interject here on, I just came back from California on Monday night and from the state convention there. And there was a lot of energy for Trump there. And I thought I'd just say it was an interesting convention. I've been to a lot of conventions in California as well as around the country. This one was the most raucous, mainly because when I arrived, by the time I flew into San Francisco and got to the hotel, there were hundreds of protesters in front of the hotel, seemingly being there as anti-Trump. Had to get escorted into the hotel. Others couldn't really get in there at all, and once you're in the hotel, you couldn't get out. But the quick look that I took at those protesters was it's one of those typical left-wing protests that you get. Trump definitely gets kind of a visceral reaction from people, but what we have here is just that it was amalgamation of groups. Even the San Francisco Chronicle said the local activist groups, including the Anti-Police Terror Project, Black Lives Matter, Bay Area, the Blackout Collective, those types of things. There was a woman running around carrying a sign that says, we need socialism, capitalism kills. So it wasn't just the strict anti-Trump. It's this left-wing excuse to come and demonstrate for something, and who knows how many of those people were paid.
Well, the other thing that illustrates is, it's the extremes of both sides are prevailing in this. The nativist far right of the right and the socialist part of the left, and the who does represent the moderates. It's sort of a battle to them, but I'm not sure that there are enough moderates to win the election anymore. I think everybody's on one edge or the other.
Yep. All right, let's move on. There was an interesting report here about the Obama economy based on GDP growth. So we had first quarter GDP coming in at 0.5%. The story was that would, assuming 2.67 real GDP growth for 2016, Obama will leave office having produced an average of 1.55% growth. So here, this would place his presidency fourth from the bottom of the list of the other presidents, above only those of Herbert Hoover Andrew Johnson, and Teddy Roosevelt. And he's the only president in history that will not have 1 year of 3% growth. So all this great talk about Obama economy, remember at the beginning, too, he was blaming the malaise on Bush for a long time, wouldn't take ownership of it at all. It's clearly his economy, but it's not going well.
Right. And 7 years on, it's not Bush's fault. You know, if it's 7 years it takes you to turn around the economy, you're not doing it right. Okay?
Right. And we're really kind of borderline recession area. I mean, you know, we had the official, I think, is they have to have 2 or 3 quarters of negative growth or something like that to be officially declared that way. But, you know, 0.5%, I mean, you know, we're on the precipice of that, and I think a lot of people are feeling that, and that could be a key in the election in the fall too. I think that's one of the reasons Trump gets a lot of support, is that he makes people feel that he can turn the economy around, he can create jobs.
That's right, and there are three basic ways you generate growth, though. One is lower interest rates, the other is lower taxes, and the third is increased trade. And he has not been able to get to grow trade, you know, partly because of his relations with Congress, which have been abysmal from day one. He has never tried to engage seriously, and it has really cost him in his presidency. Interest rates have been 0 or negative for just about the entire period of his presidency, and he's not ever going to lower taxes. So you get what you get.
Yeah, I really enjoy earning 0.05%, if that, on my money. I remember when I could earn a lot more on that. And, you know, and the people on fixed income feel that, so
Right.
it really hurts them more than anybody else. So we have a couple more things we want to get to just really quick before we end. Larry Wilmore, White House Correspondents' Dinner, his speech. Now, I happened to tune into just a little bit of that after I was done at the convention in California, and I have to say I was rather shocked about the thought. First off, I thought it was a terrible performance by Larry Wilmore, but to kind of end that whole thing by looking at the president and, you know, calling him my nigga, that was, I'm sorry, maybe some people thought it was funny, but, and I'm no Barack Obama fan, but I don't think you turn to the president and say that.
Right. A lot of people brought that up. I think we're probably getting pretty close to a rethink on the White House Correspondents' Dinner anyway. I read through the transcript of what he said, and there just wasn't much in there that was funny. And sort of the whole state of stand-up comedy right now, it's like, who's good at it? Who's today's George Carlin? Who's today's Richard Pryor? Who, like, makes you think beyond... You know, I don't necessarily agree with, you know, George Carlin. A lot of what he said was nonsense, but, you know, it made you think, and it made you, like, rule on it that it was nonsense, you know. And there's no one now. It is gags, and it's like, who can be the most edgy, who can say that, you know, get away with saying the most, and so forth. And this guy, he's just not very good.
No, I mean, I for the short time I got to see his monologue, his performance, I was cringing. You know, I would have just preferred to see Barack Obama spend more time, you know, because he's actually got
he's
some.
actually
He's funny. He's
yeah.
pretty good at this. Yeah, you know, it's almost sad that we're seeing him leave. It's kind of hard to imagine anybody else is succeeding him is going to be funny. I mean, Hillary. Oh, I think if it's Hillary, they definitely have to rethink this thing.
I also think if it's Trump, we'll do it at least one more time the way it is now.
Yeah.
Because Trump can hardly wait to get there and give his little speech. I think, you know, there was a story, I guess, out this week that's what this was all about, is he got insulted at the White House Correspondents' Dinner and said, I'll show them, right? And I think that, like, he's going to show them once. He's going to have to sit through it one time.
Oh, I think that'll be very entertaining, to say the least. All right, last item, just a quick take. ESPN edits out Kurt Schilling's Bloody Sock performance from its documentary. Obviously, Kurt Schilling didn't like that very much. ESPN defended it by saying it was necessary because of programming, timing. You know, they had a crunch there. But, you know, Schilling has been fired from ESPN over his tweet about the North Carolina, you know, bathroom law. So you kind of wonder where this is going. I mean, it's Kurt and ESPN. I don't have any great love for ESPN necessarily. They tend to be very politically correct. But it's an interesting sideline, or whatever you want to call it, to this whole story.
Yeah, well, Kurt is there's not a lot of love out there for him either. He stepped on a lot of toes in his baseball career, and so there are a lot of people that just, you know, could look at the thing even-handedly. Otherwise, with him, they're like whatever.
Yeah, and I don't think Kurt needs ESPN, and maybe ESPN doesn't need Kurt, so it's probably just as well that they're going on. Kurt seems to be actively tweeting about things, and he's never shy about his opinion. So I guess we can just leave that as it may. And then the final thing.
But I would say one thing about that is he is in a profession where you can't be political, right? So now he's political. So maybe, a lot of these guys, most of the people ESPN has fired over the years have made their way somewhere else. It may be hard for him, given the closed community that is baseball, its relationship with ESPN, and the unwillingness of Fox and other competitors to take on that baggage.
I think he's definitely burned his bridges, within the sports world in terms of trying to get another job like that. There's no doubt about it in my mind. Quickly, Nationals doing well. Bryce Harper in a slump, pitching doing pretty good until you get to Papelbon. Right. I don't know. That's a closer that's just making me want Drew Storen back.
Drew Storen cost him 3 World Series. I'm fine with Drew Storen being out of town, but last night I watched the end of the Royals game. His fastball is like 90, 91. You throw it 91, it better be moving and it better hit the right spot, because that's baseball. Major league players eat that up. And usually what they're seeing that time of game is some guy 96, 97. So you're 91, you're turkey. You have
to be throwing the heat at that point in time. That's what they're expecting. And if you're in the low 90s and it, like you said, it's not moving, that's a real problem. And it was a problem. There's
a lot of squared up balls.
Yeah, I mean, basically when Papelbon blows a save, he blows it in style.
Yeah.
And so far, that's what he's shown this year. All right, that's all the time we have. Thanks for everybody for watching and joining us today. And don't forget to follow us on social media, on Twitter, and like our Facebook page, both for Accuracy and Media and for us personally. And we'll wait till you see you again next week on The Bias Buzz.